Hello, historians. So in this video, I'm going to model for you how I would write my thesis statement. So my first step is to look at my question for my essay and then use part of the question to start my thesis. This will be like the main idea of my thesis. So I am going to take a look at this question, which I see is which factors contributed to the success of Mesopotamia and Egypt. And then what I did is I just took the main idea from that and I wrote it to start my thesis statement off right here. So Mesopotamia and Egypt grew to be successful civilizations. That's the main idea, right? Then my second step is to look for patterns between the evidence choice that you see below, because these patterns that I find are going to help me figure out what my assertions are going to be for my body paragraphs. And those assertions go into my thesis statement. So I'm going to look over the evidence choices that I chose and look for patterns. Evidence 1, the Nile River in Egypt would overflow and people depended on it for food and water. Okay. The rivers in Mesopotamia were a vital part of the civilization. They provided food, transportation, as well as plants. Okay, so I'm already noticing that both of these pieces of evidence that I found are both talking about rivers. They're talking about how the rivers helped the people. They gave them food and water. Ooh. So I'm asking myself, well, what could I label these patterns are? What could an assertion be about the rivers and how that helped them, how that helped the Mesopotamians and Egyptians be successful? So I'm thinking like, oh, well, this is kind of showing that they had really good geography. They had really good resources. So that might have been one reason why they were successful. Now I'm going to look at my other two sources and look for patterns there. The goal of King Hammurabi's law is to protect the weak and the oppressed. Okay, so to protect the weak, that's the goal of the king's laws. And then over here, a pharaoh, which is an Egyptian king, is a god whose job is that of a mother and a father of all people. Okay, so they're the mother and father of all, and they're the Egyptian king, the pharaoh. So in these two, I'm noticing it's talking about, I chose evidence that talks about their rulers, their leaders. So I'm going to label these two patterns, or I'm going to label these two sources as kind of like they had really good rulers or their leadership was really strong. And that might have been why they became successful civilizations. So now my last step then is to add my patterns to my because. So first I'm going to add the because word because I need to give two reasons why. And then I'm going to add those patterns that I've found to my thesis statement, and then my thesis statement is done. So when I do that, it'll look like this. Thesis is Mesopotamia and Egypt grew to be successful civilizations because of their natural resources. So that's the rivers that I talked about earlier, and their strong leaders. Notice how my entire thesis statement, that's all in my own words. So I'm not copying from the text, right? And I really had to ask myself, like, what patterns do I see between these pieces of evidence that I could use to make assertions for? And that is how you write a thesis statement.